All right, Colts Nation, we are back with another episode here during training camp, and a gasp from the viewing audience as they see a familiar face across the screen. Audio listeners, like, what the heck is going on? Don't worry, I'm getting there. We have a very special guest today here to bring us an insider's perspective on what's going on during Colts training camp, someone whose time I am unbelievably grateful for. Obviously very busy at this time of the year. I introduced to you coming straight from the driver's seat of his car, of course, parked. We're not partaking in any illegal activity. Kent Sterling, what's going on, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. I'm glad I see no rain over there. Out here in New York, absolutely pouring outside right now. I had to change the shirt, literally walked in from work, and I was like I had hopped in a shower, which I could probably use right now. But neither here nor there. For those of you who have never seen this show with a guest before, essentially what we do is we start off talking specifically about the Colts, and then on the back end of the episode, we have questions for the guests themselves, and hopefully you learn something different about them. So without further ado, we're going to get started. Of course, like, subscribe, the whole bit, as I usually go into the whole thing. But Kent, you ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so before we get specifically into things just about training camp, I can't help but start by trying to get a little bit of a rise out of you, because I do know that we disagree on this type of thing. What is your temperature right now on Chris Ballard as we sit here today versus this time last year?
I think Chris had a really good draft, and I think he got deep into free agency a little bit. And so I'm not maybe as reflexively negative about Ballard this year as I have been in the past. I think that the first two rounds of the draft, and maybe the first three with Wally, really kind of stand out. Wally has looked really good in camp. Tui Moloau has looked terrific so far. And granted, it's cold on Colt crime, right? So we don't know what that's going to look like September 7th when they host the Dolphins, and this all counts. But Tyler Warren looks like he's going to be a star in the National Football League. Your eyes just go to him. He's one of those guys, like, you watch in camp and your eyes just lock in on 84. He has that kind of magnetism right out the jump.
And you'd say with Warren, what you're seeing is an athleticism thing? Is it just an overall presence? Are you able to pinpoint what that is exactly?
Well, he's got that. He's got a great catch radius. He's got great hands. He's got good speed. He knows how to run a route. So he checks all those boxes. Early in camp, they were kind of using him as a tight end and a tight end alone. And then all of a sudden, the last two workouts, he's been an H-back. They've split him out wide. He seems to have a really good grasp of what being a football player is. But to answer your question, he's one of those guys where it's kind of a subjective, visceral thing. It's not really the combination of his traits. It's just kind of like when you go into a basketball gym and you're trying to evaluate players. That when you walk in, your eyes just naturally go to the person who is the best player. And that's kind of the thing here. Your eyes just go to 84.
Well, we'd love to hear that, obviously. First round pick kind of just fell to the Indianapolis Colts in a way that was really a stroke of good luck that feels like the organization has not gotten in quite a period of time. Kind of the first year for a while, not to get ahead of ourselves here, where it feels like somewhat of a lack of drama at this juncture and everything as compared to years past. Of course, there was the Jim Irsay deal, but generally like a major injury, a holdout, something by now, right?
And, the good thing is that the Bears and the Colts had the same need. And you can always count on the Bears to pick the wrong guy, not throwing any shade at Colston Loveland, but Tyler Warren was the guy. And anybody who watched any Penn State football last year understood that, even though Loveland had a really good game against Illinois when he was playing for Michigan, or when he played against Indiana and playing for Michigan. Like, you just prayed when the Bears went on the clock they were going to do the wrong thing and take Loveland, and they did, which they always seem to do.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. So one of the things I wanted to ask right off the bat, because I haven't had the opportunity to be there in person, kind of one of the big themes that was being pushed by Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen headed into this training camp, physicality what was the buzzword that we were hearing, right? In terms of this is going to be a real physical training camp. Now, I know they just got started with pads. Have you at all seen that manifest itself in a way that maybe you hadn't seen last year, the year before? Like, is that showing up to this point?
I think so. Like there have been, and it's only happened twice, but there have been a couple of dust-ups between players. Like I think it was it might have been Monday or Tuesday. The days all kind of run into each other. Jonathan Taylor takes a ball off tackle to the right. Grover Stewart grabs him, throws him down. Jonathan Taylor gets up, tries to shove Grover Stewart.
Yeah.
Grover just stands there and laughs at him. So there's been that kind of physicality. They are kind of thudding to the ground. There's no, grabbing a guy and twisting him. There's none of that kind of physicality, but they're hitting more often. I think they're getting into each other a little bit more, and I think tonight that's going to ratchet up a level.
No doubt. So the sisters, what has their presence been? Have they been at camp a whole bunch? Obviously, last year Jim Irsay made a showing, and due to kind of everything that was going on, I mean, that was like televised news, him making an appearance. But do the sisters are they there often? I guess is my question.
Carly Irsay Gordon is here every day, and she's
Awesome.
on the field every day, and she's got a clipboard, and she's looking at stuff and communicating with people, figuring out what's going on and what they're trying to get done so she can evaluate what's getting done. I think I saw Kaylee at one, but Carly is the one who's kind of omnipresent, and she's really hard to miss because she's a unique dresser. And so it's not like she's wearing a Colts hoodie or a Colts shirt, Colts pants, and white shoes. She's got garb on that makes her stand out among everybody else on the sidelines or among those people who are auditing kind of the work being done. And so she's there. But I think she's been very impressive. The media availability that she had with her sisters when they took over and the first time they talked to the media, like she was no nonsense, and she's not kidding around. I mean, Morocco Brown, gone. Other people within the organization, gone. If she asked people, what is your job? And she didn't get a good answer, they had to go. She isn't going to pay people to stand around and collect paychecks and not perform some kind of important task on the other end. She's not playing. And that's either going to be really good news for Chris Ballard or really bad news for Chris Ballard. We're going to find out at the end of the season. I think if they don't go to the playoffs, I think it's going to be tough for Chris to keep his gig.
For sure. And as far as her presence, I mean, you don't also have to assume that that's a good thing in the sense of like her being there every day. Obviously, a lot easier to stay engaged when the person that's signing the checks is kind of there on the sideline watching as opposed to wherever they might be. So given that, as we shift over to the players, obviously we have to talk about the quarterback position because with the Indianapolis Colts, as is annual tradition to talk about the quarterback position at this juncture, ever since he who shall not be named stepped off the field in week 4 of a preseason. A lot being said right now about really, I guess, the maturity and the approach of Anthony Richardson. At least that's how it's being covered from the outsider's perspective looking in. Now, one thing I had personally noticed about him, and I suppose this is somewhat, I guess, 2020 hindsight, but last year he did, at least at the sessions that I had gone to in training camp, he had somewhat of a lackadaisical approach in the sense there was a whole lot of dancing and kind of, it didn't look like maybe every throw was being taken seriously before practice actually started, where you'd have one sailing 10, 15 yards almost over a guy's head. And one of the things I thought coming into this year, I was like, well, not for anything. If I was there, I guess I would have been hoping maybe, not that he has bad moves, but for a little less dancing. Does it feel like there's been a demeanor change in him that's really apparent when you show up to practice?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, again, how that's going to manifest itself on September 7th, but at least in camp, the first 2 days were not good for the offense at all. They weren't good for Richardson. They weren't good for Daniel Jones. After that, then the second 2 days, much better for Richardson, and he's continued to be really, really good, where he's not trying to throw it through people's hands anymore. He's taken some velocity off, and he is more locked into the result of each and every play, each and every snap that he takes, each and every rep that he's been in the past. And you can argue, you can say, look, he should have been that from the jump, and he should have. Like that should have been his demeanor, being the fourth guy taken overall in the 23 draft. He should have come out with that attitude. But I don't think he's been coached. He was raised by his mom. I don't think that he's had that kind of somebody to kick him in the ass when that ass kicking was needed. And I think now they've had the conversation with him like it's nut cutting time. Either you're going to show up or you got to go. You're going to pack a bag. And that promising NFL career that you had hoped for is going to vanish right in front of your eyes. I think that got his attention. And Shane Steichen is a guy who gives political answers periodically. And by that, I mean they can tend to be a little bit word salad-ish. And when he was asked, what is the determining factor going to be? What will the criterion be in selecting a starting quarterback? He looked straight at the guy who asked and said, consistency. Like he was not just communicating with us and fans, he was communicating with Anthony Richardson as he had in meetings. And Anthony has been much more consistent in this camp, which I think he's going to win the job. I mean, there's not to get ahead of us, but there's no way if he's focused. I mean, the physical gifts that this guy has are unbelievable, unmatched in the NFL, and Daniel Jones can't sniff him with the athletic gifts that he has. And he's not terrible. Like you saw him in New York, you saw him with the Giants. He can run it a little bit. He had almost 800 yards rushing in 22, the good year for the Giants. So he can get some things done athletically, but Anthony Richardson's just a specimen. And well, another thing, and this kind of has been under the radar here, not too many people talking about it, he's lost 15 pounds. And so he's cut up a little bit, didn't add muscle mass. He just ate better, behaved better in the offseason, meaning that he was working out more often. And because of that, the weight came off. It wasn't a purposeful thing where he was trying to get down to 240. It's just that he's doing more right things that lead to that result.
Yeah, and that was kind of the big tell, and I know, and then he said it, but the first thing I looked and said is, wow, this guy looks like really trim right now, and that was the first piece of evidence. And then again, all the coverage has been positive, but again, it is kind of hard to tell because it's the time of the year, right, where everyone wants to be positive. So, maybe a couple bad things happen during practice. We're not going to cover those things, and then we'll just cover the things that are going well. But right now, signs looking good for Anthony Richardson on that front. Has Daniel Jones surprised you in any capacity or just meh?
He moves better than I thought. I thought part of the reason that his rush yards and attempts have gone down is the ACL tear.
Yeah.
And that maybe that kind of drained a little of the athleticism. But when he puts his foot in the ground, he goes. And I mean, if you didn't watch for a long time, if you were watching Riley Leonard and Daniel Jones, one wears 17, one wears 15. It would be really difficult for you to figure out which was which. It would take a bunch of reps. He's not that guy. Your eyes, like we were talking about Tyler Warren, your eyes just go to Tyler Warren. Your eyes do not just go to Daniel Jones in the same way that they don't go to Riley Leonard. Leonard isn't as accurate as Jones is, but Jones doesn't wow you with accuracy. He doesn't wow you with his foot speed. There's no wow factor with Daniel Jones. On a scale of 1 to 10, he's probably a 7 at everything. And Anthony Richardson, he's got some 9 to 9.5s in a few areas.
That's for sure. I want to shift over to the running back position a little bit because obviously Jonathan Taylor, we know what he brings to the table. I thought one of the positions of need for the Indianapolis Colts that wasn't being talked about too much this offseason, and they didn't really just outright address with an obvious guy, I guess obvious in the sense we assume he's going to take the role, but was kind of like a pass catching, third down running back type of guy, right? I mean, you think about trying to get easy completions for a guy like Anthony Richardson hitting someone out of the backfield, a big deal. It's now assumed that DJ Giddens, 5th round rookie, is the guy that's coming in and taking those reps. Is that what it is? Is he firmly entrenched in the pass catching situation? Sylvan Ahmed was kind of a guy I thought maybe could carve a role.
I think that Giddens is the guy. He had 2 really good years. Anthony Richardson's lack of experience notwithstanding, I think they like to go out and get a running back who's shown that he can be that guy, whatever that guy is. Like Jonathan Taylor, he had a gazillion carries when he was at Wisconsin, maybe too many. I think Giddens, sort of the same guy the last 2 years at K-State, really showed what he can do. He's not the thing that they like about him, and they're right, and the thing that kind of jumps out at you as you watch is he's kind of smooth in his cuts. He's not real jerky. He's not real shifty. He's very smooth and still gets that job done and accelerates very quickly. And it looks like, everybody knew it was going to be a really deep running back draft. And so getting a guy like Giddens in the 5th round is kind of like when they got Marlon Mack in the 4th a few years ago. Yeah, they got a lot of yardage out of Marlon Mack until he got hurt. And I think that Giddens can be that guy to take some of the load in a very, they had Sermon last year, and they've still got Sermon, but there's nothing special there.
Sermon's out there? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, and the other guy's gone. What was it, Goodson or whatever the hell? Guys who drop passes, who that keep the Colts out of the playoffs, I automatically delete the file of that name, and they're gone, in my mind. So Sermon and Goodson are kind of like the same guy to me. One of them's still here. Number 31's still here, whichever guy that is. And
it's good. So yeah, it's hysterical.
Like Giddens is better in every way, and seems to be a very serious guy, serious about his craft. When you talk to him, it's not a lot of jokes. It's not a lot of rookie anxiety. It's like, I know I'm here to learn, and so that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to do my best to show on the field what I have learned. I like his approach to everything.
All right. Speak of approaches, then let's switch over to the defense real quick. How do you like Lou Anarumo and kind of his approach, kind of how he speaks right off the bat in terms of kind of how he's matter of fact? What are you liking out of him so far?
That's the thing. He's very matter of fact. He holds people accountable. You make a mistake, he's going to tell you about it, and he's going to tell everybody about it. He's in a team meeting where a guy screws up, he'll isolate that piece of tape, show what should have been done, and make the guy feel a bit like a stooge. So he's holding people accountable, maybe at a level, and I don't know what Gus Bradley was like in meetings like that. I know Eberflus was a lot like that, where he would hold guys accountable. But Gus, I think, was kind of a guy who really is just a good-natured guy. And I don't think Lou is encumbered by good-naturism. Like he's not gonna candy coat anything. And the really positive thing about Anarumo is he's very game specific in his scheming. And Gus Bradley was going to throw Gus Bradley's defense at you every single game of the regular season. Lou Anarumo could throw the kitchen sink at you on one Sunday, and then, take you to a completely different room with a bunch of different things in it the next Sunday. So one week it could be all blitz. The next week it could be nickel. The next week it could be dime. Next week it could be bear. We've seen some bear defense out here, which is like the guys, the personnel for the Colts kind of fit a bear scheme really, really well, because they've got edges who can come inside a little bit and cover up the other guard. And we didn't do that last year. The Colts, for whatever reason, chose not to be that team, despite people within the organization saying, Gus, come on, let's run some bear. Like they're killing us up the gut. And Gus was intractable. Now they're running that stuff, and they're even running it in camp. And so people who know defense really well watching camp are very pleased.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I do like that. I was stoked when they got Lou Anarumo. I'm from New York. He has that kind of Upper East Coast edge. He's a Staten Island guy. He has that that 2 hours on the BQE to get 5 miles type of edge to him. You know what I'm saying? Like he has a little bit of that. And, being from New York, and not the stereotype, but there is a perception. We think about Indiana, the Midwest, everyone's nice, friendly. And I think maybe Lou Anarumo brings a little bit of that edge, hopefully, because accountability, and I don't know the truth behind it, but that was kind of the term getting thrown around last year. Everything, no accountability. Maybe everything was a little laissez-faire, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of that New Yorker, maybe to come into the Indianapolis Colts and make a difference. And then speak of big changes on the defensive side of the ball. Just how good is Charvarius Ward? Because I've always enjoyed watching him. and from Kansas City on, and we've seen some good corners, not a bunch of them, but guys like Vontae Davis, Stephon Gilmore, as compared to them, like just how good is he out there?
He's better. He's better than both those guys. This is the best cornerback I've ever seen. And we're a week and a half into camp, and so I get it. This is way early to say crazy things. Indiana basketball had a guy named Miles Rice this year who had one good game, and I said, I haven't seen point guard play like that out of an Indiana guy since Isaiah Thomas, and people still mock me for that. So I don't know what Mooney Ward is going to be once the regular season starts, but Michael Pittman Jr. is having to dip deep into his bag of tricks to get even an ounce of daylight out there when he's covered by Ward. Ward's got him blanketed. And so I think that's going to make Pittman better. I think it's going to make that defense better. And so if you've got a guy, and this is the way all aspects of the defense are interrelated, right? If you've got a guy like Ward, who is a stopper at one corner, and you can get legitimate play out of another corner, whether it's Jalen Jones or Juju Brents or whoever it is, you know what? That gives maybe a guy like Leatu Latu another half second to get to a quarterback, and he was maybe a half second away 10 times from getting more sacks, and maybe less than a half second. So, as we look at Latu's 4 sacks or Kwity Paye's 8 sacks, and you say, geez, can't these guys get to the quarterback? A lot of that's got to do with the cornerbacks not being able to cover for 2.5, 3 seconds. Mooney Ward is going to cover guys for 2.5 and 3 seconds. And Cam Bynum, the other guy in the back end of that defense at free safety, has looked really good in camp too. But to your point about Ward, he changes everything for this defense.
Is he vocal? Zaire Franklin obviously has not been practicing up to this point. He's generally the vocal leader, right? Have you been able to kind of see who's taking that role in the defense in the absence of Franklin out there?
There is a real collective joy in the secondary. So like Kenny Moore, a lot of talk. Ward, a lot of talk. Bynum never stops talking. So there's all kinds of communication, whether it's mockery of the offense or kind of that connectivity defensively that you need. Those guys are coming with it. And that is a real step. That's a step in the right direction. I think you had guys at corner last year, Jalen Jones kind of notwithstanding, but you had guys like Womack. They got a tough time. I mean, if it wasn't for the Colts being in such dire need at cornerback, I don't know whether he isn't just a special teamer. You had that kind of level of play at the quarterback position. And now you got a guy coming with athleticism, speed, ability, length, and attitude, and it works out really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good-looking group on paper, is it not? When you think about, number one, the fact that Justin Wally was – so in OTAs, I had heard that he was out there starting on the outside, and I kind of thought it was like a case of let's just get the rookie's feet wet and kind of see where he fits in. But then he comes out in training camp, and he's starting over – Juju Brent's one thing because he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but starting over Jalen Jones is nothing to sneeze at all. I mean, that's a good football player. So for a third-round rookie to come in, he has to be showing something special. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. And a lot of people thought that they overshot with Wally, that he should have been a 4th or 5th round guy. I talked to a guy who prepares teams for drafts for a living. And I was like, what'd you say? And he said, I talked to the Colts. I said, wherever you can get him, get him. They had me look at his tape specifically. I looked at him and I said, wherever you can take this guy, take this guy. He's really smart. He's very fast and he's a tremendous competitor. So if people don't go get him early and you can land him in the 3rd, don't worry about what all these other yo-yos are saying. Go get him.
Yeah, and definitely exciting to see how aggressively they attack that position overall. And really the secondary, although I will say minus one thing, the depth at safety. Of course, you have your 2 guys, and Cam Bynum has been the epitome of durability up to this point in his career. Nick Cross, I really like his style of play. I like what he brings. I'm not going to lie. Just a guy that's going to play downhill and give a little bit of the, right? A little bit of the nasty to the defense is how I like to put it. Nick Cross is that dude. I kind of didn't hate the way he handled last year after he hurt Josh Downs, and it was the big thing. I kind of liked him coming out there and saying, like, listen, we're out here playing football. Like, fuck yeah, Nick Cross. I enjoy that, right? But In terms of the depth behind them, what's going on, right? I mean, Rodney McLeod, we know he's played games in the league and done pretty well for the Colts in spots. But other than that, I mean, you have Hunter Waller, Daniel Scott, the poor guy. He's one injury away from, I don't even want to make a joke in bad taste, but he's been injured, right? So you really have Daniel Scott, who we haven't seen play a snap, and Hunter Waller as the two backup safeties. Am I missing something there? Is someone looking good or?
No, not looking good, but you got Rodney Thomas, who's played a little bit. He's what I think this is his third year out of Yale.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to rely on him on the back end of that defense, obviously, I mean, they wouldn't have signed Cam Bynum if he was going to be the answer.
He was going to cut it. Right. Exactly.
So they do like Waller, and I don't blame them for liking Waller, but I think they're going to try to convert him to linebacker at some point and have Waller be sort of what Grant Stewart was to the team last year, where he gets some snaps at linebacker under duress, right, in case of injury, but he's going to be a gunner on special teams. He's going to do good work. I think that's kind of where Waller belongs. It wouldn't surprise me if late in the game they find a way to sign a 32, 33-year-old safety who can still, have 1 year where 5 times a year he's got to come in and do the right thing and communicate correctly and know what the opposing offense is going to do. It wouldn't surprise me if that happened. Maybe post-cut day, somebody tries to trim some salary somehow. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Colts make a move and get some kind of depth piece at free safety.
Gotcha. And another position on the defensive side of the ball that I felt like they were relying on a bit of unknowns, and some of the players I don't mind. I'm a huge Sagan Olaby fan. The linebacker position, Joe Bocci, a name that we're hearing, and I kind of am a little partial towards him because when they signed him, I kind of saw like, oh, okay, you have him from the Bengals. I saw that there could be value there, but has he actually been like particularly good at the linebacker position? And Jalen Carley sticking out. Obviously, we know Zaire and what he brings, but the rest of the room kind of we're in the dark.
Bocci is good enough that, he's one of those guys we all carry around a roster because you got like 80 guys out there. And sometimes somebody does something, you don't recognize the number, and you haven't seen these new guys. And I've looked, who is that guy? And it winds up being Bocci like twice a practice. And you're like, hey, you know what? Cool. That guy, he's at least, flashing something. And they would never have acquired him if Lou Anarumo didn't think highly of him. 100%. So one thing you get great with Lou is a good scout with those former Bengals guys, and he knows Lou's system. And so maybe he's ahead of people because of that. But you know what? You're exactly right. I think that he's looked good. Carlisle has looked okay. Like, he hadn't looked great, but they've got people playing kind of out of spot. They don't, like, Zaire's the mic. And so they got, like, Carlisle is playing. So they got different people in different spots, and so it's kind of hard to figure. And the secondary's been so good that maybe we're not looking in that area as much. So, and we're looking at the line as well, seeing if Latu is showing some diversity in his abilities at edge, some diversity in his moves. If Pay looks a little bit different, Stewart and Buckner look exactly the same. I think it's going to be interesting to see whether JT Tuimoloau, whether he gets involved in that rotation, because you've got Lewis, you've got Ebicom, who's back and looks good coming off that Achilles tear.
Solid.
And then you've got Pay and you've got Latu. And so he's kind of a fifth wheel. Somebody's going to be a fifth wheel. I'd be stunned if it was Tuimoloau because he just looks like a football player. He looks good.
Yeah, and really appreciated kind of them. And he's one of the prime examples of it. Them, for once, prioritizing this idea, and heard Lou Anarumo say it in the media availability. Guys that have a winning pedigree, right? When you have even a Riley Leonard, who's a third-string quarterback, but you kind of looked and said, okay, between the free agents they brought in and the guys in the draft, there was a clear trend of like, hey, these guys have contributed to winning football. And that's kind of something the Colts lacks. You have a bunch of good players, but also a lot of dudes from college. I mean, Zaire Franklin, love him, but 7th rounder out of Syracuse. I'm from New York. I would love to shill for them. Syracuse doesn't do any damn winning. You know what I'm saying? EJ Speed, obviously not around anymore. He was at a Tarleton State. So kind of nice to see that side of things from the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm hoping things are a little bit different. Would you say your gut feeling right now, do things quote unquote feel different? Like you hear that get thrown
bit.
around a little bit.
Little bit. I feel, and I especially feel that I think on the defensive side of the ball, those guys seem to have a bit of a different attitude, a bit more grit to them. That might be the wrong word, but I mean, there's just more, there's like more fire on that side of the ball than I've seen the last couple of years. And that's where they got to get better. In the AFC South, the Colts have led in scoring the last 2 years. Where they've gotten their ass kicked is on the defensive side of the ball. That seems like it's come around a little bit. And then when you add a guy like Warren on the offense, even though you lose Kelly and you lose Fries, I don't think you drop off much with Gonsalves and Bortolini. And so I kind of like this is about as set an offense as they've had. And I think that the defense looks more explosive and more competent and more competently led than we've seen in a long time. I mean, the days that even in camp, I don't know what you learn from setting like cornerbacks 10 yards off the receiver.
Yeah.
Why? Like if you're going to do it in the game, when you rather get guys repping, kind of jamming guys and playing press than you would playing a soft zone where, you've got a quarterback who needs to be more accurate, who's thrown underneath and really doesn't care which side of a receiver he hits. It just didn't make any sense to me last year. This year, things make more sense.
Right. And you do wonder how much that side of things is contributing to kind of the offense trending up a little bit, where you really have a defense here that's forcing them to get better. And
Yep.
a play caller on the defensive side of the ball that hopefully not only one thing, obviously pushing the quarterbacks, but two, pushing Shane Steichen as a play caller, who I think is brilliant. And I thought got a lot of really unwarranted, whatever you want to call it. It's all water under the bridge now, but he got a lot of blowback last year. Final question for you before we move on to more questions about you and kind of get to the back end of this thing right here. One of the things you had told me when we had spoken previously is your favorite part of training camp, or one of your favorite parts of training camp, is kind of this, finding that diamond in the rough, looking around and kind of seeing like, oh, look at that guy. And you had mentioned Joe Bacci, but is there anyone else right now that's sticking out to you? Last year, you said no one, which was sad to hear, but this year?
You know what? I don't have a roster with me. All I remember is his number, and that's 43 on the offensive side. I do remember that he's a wide receiver out of Emporia State. Ooh, as an undrafted free agent, but for the life of me, I cannot remember his name. And he's a guy who's just done everything right. He's catching everything. He's running routes correctly. He looks like he's got a little bit of burst to him. And so, like, he's one of those guys, like I was saying about Bacci, I'm looking at the roster and I'm like 43-0. And here's this guy, and I'm like, that guy's got a shot to stick at least with the practice squad. I think he looks good. But that's you always know when you've got like an O or a D next to your number on the roster, you don't have much chance to make the team. Because they got 2 43s, they got one on defense. This guy, though, I think he looks pretty good. And I was right a couple of years ago about a guy very similar in that way with Ethan Fernia out of UCLA.
I remember.
And so Fernie is not here this year, but this guy's got some Ethan Fernia to him, and I kind of like that. That's kind of fun.
Cool. So now we're going to switch to the questions about Kent Sterling. Everyone,
sure.
You made it this far, so now you're about to learn about the man himself. So right off the bat, let me ask you, what time do you record Breakfast with Kent every morning?
It's live, and it's 6:40 every morning.
6:40 every morning,
yep.
and then you go to practice and you upload how many times a day? Many times a day. Let's just put it that way. To stay that productive, to stay that consistent throughout the course of the day, does Kent Sterling have some sort of morning routine? I
get up at 5:45 every day, and so I've got the Breakfast with Kent pretty much. I know what I'm going to say. And then I just go do it at 6:40. And I like it being live because it can be a little bit interactive and I'm taking questions from people. And so I enjoy that part of it. It's kind of challenging and interesting. I wrap up by 7. I do a radio show, a morning radio show on a Bloomington, Indiana radio station, WGCL. And that lasts until 9. And then if the workout's at 10 up here, I get here at about 9:40 and watch a workout, do a live wrap up of what happened during the workout, and then record with a coach like Steichen or the coordinators, whoever we get. And then there are usually 3 or 4 players, and cut all those together in the media room, and then do Inside Indiana Sports Now at about 4 o'clock or 4:30 every afternoon. And then we go back and do the whole thing over, set up the radio show for the next day that night, and then Breakfast with Kent that night also.
Are you actually a breakfast guy? Like, are you eating something before you over under 5 cups of coffee on the day? Like...
I eat after. I eat during the breaks of the radio show, to tell you the truth. So, you know, and that doesn't bother me. I've never been a big breakfast guy. You know, I don't need like 3 scrambled eggs to make my day complete. You know, so like my wife makes me a little smoothie that I take with me, and some eggs, and off I go, and, you know, eat when I can. And just, I really enjoy the work. I mean, it's really, really fun. And that's what I tell anybody who's going to do this. And this one thing that you do that drew me to you immediately is that you enjoy this. You're good at it, but I think you're good at it because you enjoy it. And there are 4 things you need to be when you do this. And I think we've talked about this. You've got to be authentic, and anybody can do that. That's just being you. You've got to be relevant. Everybody can do that as long as you know what relevant is. So if you're doing a show about the Colts, talk about the Colts. That's easy enough. You got to have fun. I can have fun. I know how to do that. And then you've got to be a little bit innovative. And innovation is where a lot of radio shows, and this is podcasts or radio, you know, if you can do something a little bit innovative and make your work stand out from others, you know, you win. And it's just kind of that easy. The fun, the authentic, the relevant, like that's in my wheelhouse. So I don't want to come on here and be somebody else. Like, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm not an actor. I'm going to be me. And if people like that, they like it. And if they don't, they don't. And that's fine. No, you know, no skin off my toenails. It's fine. But relevant, I can do. I'm talking about the Colts. I'm talking about Indiana basketball, Indiana football, and the Pacers. And a little bit about the Fever, because Sophie Cunningham is awesome. So we talk about the Indiana Fever a little bit. But, I mean, and you do it every day. And if you can find a way to enjoy it every day, I think you got the world whooped.
Great. And then you touched on it right there for a second. And I was going to ask, of all the sports that you cover, which sport is your favorite? Like, was one of the sports like your first love or something like that?
I love baseball. And then I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
Everybody was a Cubs fan where I grew up. You watched the Cubs every day on WGN. I loved it. And then I moved to New Albany, Indiana with my family, and that was southern Indiana, right near Louisville. And the only sport that matters a damn to those people at all is basketball. So you better learn basketball. You better love basketball. So I figured that out. And the thing, like, I've come a little bit late to football, but I think football is the most interesting because I think it's the most intricate. Like, not only do you have to be violent, but you've got to be detail oriented. You know, there are a bunch of like push me, pull yous, different side of the brain aspects of football that I really enjoy. And being able to, like, I worked with Rick Venturi and a guy named DeMarco Farr, who's a Pro Bowl defensive tackle with the Rams.
Awesome.
I worked with them in St. Louis. And Rick is here in Indianapolis. So, like, when I go to the workout tonight, I'll sit with Rick Venturi, and he'll tell me about, like, hand positioning for DBs, where they need to be, how to position their hands, what, you know, like, okay, you hear in pre-draft stuff, I don't like his hips. Now I know what that means. You know what I mean? So I get to look at these things after Rick sort of explained them to me, after DeMarco's explained them to me, and worked with coaches and talked to enough coaches on and offline that I kind of get football at a higher level than I ever did. And I always loved the Bears when I was in Chicago. And, the 85 Bears were the best football team I ever saw. And I always tried to know about it. It's not like I never watched and I never really studied football, but I haven't had this access to like great football minds until the last 10 years. And over those 10 years, I've really developed a love for the game and a love for the coaches as much as anything else, because the coaches, like, they got to teach this stuff.
Yeah.
While at the same time, you've got to teach tactical excellence, while at the same time letting guys go, letting them play free, letting them play fast. And that's kind of the push me, pull you aspect of this thing that I think is just absolutely fascinating.
For sure. And to speak to that point, I mean, I do think when you think about Anthony Richardson and the dynamic with him, and that is one of the things that makes it very tough, right? Because you don't want to take away what makes a guy who he is, right? Like, to get to that point, like basketball back in the 90s, Dennis Rodman was off the rails, but at the same time, he was going out there leading the league in rebounds, right? So there was kind of part of that where it's like, well, all right, if you pulled that back, could he still do that? Was that part of the very fabric of who Dennis Rodman was, not only as a person, but as a player? And I do think that's something that the Colts are going to struggle with Richardson. And I had another question about this, but I just got lost in what it is that you were saying. So perhaps I'll just move on to the next one and see if I could come up with it. But I have questions about the media availabilities, because fans, a lot of the time, you see them get upset about maybe the media not asking certain questions. And then on the other side of things, you see players or coaches get upset with the media about asking certain questions. So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. As someone who does ask those questions, are there any maybe unspoken rules of engagement when it comes to that type of thing?
Well, I don't think that you necessarily want to ask, like, what I want to do always is ask questions that will give me a good answer. There are guys in other markets, New York among them, where you don't get paid to do that. You get paid to poke the bear and see if you can get them to, like, give you a 15-second clip that's going to go viral. That's the job. I don't like that job. So I don't do that. And Indianapolis is a different market where these guys, and we get to spend a lot of time with these guys, the guys who cover this team, like, they want to do a professional job. They want to get answers that are relevant to fans here. And Indianapolis is kind of a quirky place in that the people really aren't very quirky. Like, they don't like to see people humiliated. They don't like to see people, made angry. Like Jim Mora he gave the best clip ever. A guy named Tim Bragg at Channel 6 in town asked him about the playoffs in 2001.
Classic.
And that's the Mora saying, playoffs? Yeah, it was awesome. That still sticks here, and people reference it on a daily basis because it just never happens here. People don't ask dopey questions very often. Here they ask good questions where they're trying to get these guys, give them an opportunity to articulate to a concern that fans have in a way that makes sense to the fans. That's really how people here see the job. It's different in different markets, but here that's the way they do it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think, and I'm sure many people realize this, but kind of the way I always view it, particularly like the more I do the show over here and stuff like that, you really, as someone asking the questions, have a very unique opportunity, because the local reporters, that's the stuff that gets dragged out to the national media. I mean, you're very much a part of kind of telling the story of the Indianapolis Colts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And these guys, I think I haven't known anybody that's had a really bad relationship. Like Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle's kind of a different dude. But whether with the Colts, Frank Reich, I think Frank Reich got tired of being asked some questions. But they get, what? If you're 4-12, people are going to get tired of being asked questions about their team. Chuck Pagano got tired of being asked questions. Hey, Gus, why does your defense suck?
Right.
You can only
if he had the answer, right? I mean, only he had it.
You're trying to put lipstick on that pig and ask it in a way that doesn't sound like, are you a moron? Yeah. You're trying to ask it in a good, positive way, but at the end of the day, there are only so many opportunities, so many different words, like word usages that you can, allow yourself before you sound really, really repetitive. But it's a good group here, and I always try to ask a question, and here's what they do too. So it seems incongruous a lot of the work that these guys do in asking the questions. So you've got a question about this, then you've got a question over here, and there's no real thread. There's no narrative through the questions more often than not. What they're trying to do is like if somebody's writing a piece on Cam Bynum,
Sure,
you'll have a question about a game, and then somebody will say, "What are your thoughts about Cam Bynum?" They just want to plug in a quote to their piece. So the print guys ask questions in one way, the TV guys in another, radio guys in a third way, and I'm just curious. So I ask what I'm curious about, and I really don't care. I just want those guys. I'm not trying to ask something and elicit some kind of response. I want them to think, though, and give us kind of a window into what their work is, if that makes sense.
It definitely does make sense. And sometimes, and again, I imagine you would have the insight to this type of thing. I feel like a question will get asked, and I suppose maybe you have to, and that's the answer. But there's certain questions that get asked where it's like, well, obviously he's not going to be able to answer that question. What's the logic behind asking a question like that? Is it simply because you kind of have to, just in case he answers? Like what goes into that?
You know what? Sometimes, like we know with Steichen, we've got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes nobody's got another question. And so somebody will ask a question in order to fill the time until somebody does have a question, so he doesn't go wheels up after a minute and a half. And when that happens, usually it's one of the print guys will ask a question that's almost incomprehensible. Is like, what? Why in the hell would you ask that question? Well, he's just trying to get Steichen to say something and fill that time so that one of the other guys can ask his question. You don't want the 5 minutes to not be utilized.
Sure.
So sometimes guys just ask dopey questions because nobody's going to use the answer unless it's a weirdo like me who's going to do the whole thing raw and put the whole thing raw up. Like the print guys aren't going to put a shitty quote in.
Yeah.
Just because he said it. You know what I mean? So they're kind of playing with the house's money, and they wind up sounding kind of dopey every once in a while as a result.
Got you. Appreciate that insight. And now we're going to take just a little change up in what is now going to be the final segment. I want you, and hopefully I explain the rules on this properly. It's kind of a trend going around social media a little bit. I want you to rank these 5 Chris Ballard draft picks without knowing which one comes next. So I'm going to name a guy, and you're going to put him somewhere on the list, and then hopefully it works out at the end for you.
All right.
Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Number 1, we're going to go Alec Pierce.
4.
Whew. Quick fire right there. Didn't even have to think about it. Not too shabby. All right. How about Jalen Jones?
5. I'm leaving myself wide open for some good ones. I should have left 5 blank. I should have started Pierce at 3 so I had some wiggle room in this game.
Right. You could have set him as the baseline. Next time you play the game, you'll kind of have a better idea because spoiler alert, you do wish you had 5 open right now, but nonetheless, Bernard Raymond.
1.
Solid.
That's his best pick, period.
You get a franchise left tackle, right?
Yeah, what was he, 79th? That's crazy.
I think a 3rd round pick, a phenomenal pick out of him. So number 1.
And he was old. He was old at the same time. So he was a long in the tooth guy that you took middle 3rd round. Who would think that guy, like if he'd gone to Central Michigan for 3 years, right? And he was 21, you can kind of groom that guy. You would see that he's got potential. Ryman came to Central Michigan as a tight end. He has worked out the way he works. That shows the level of work that Ballard and his staff do in grading people's personalities and figuring out what is their drive to get better. That's the thing that has served Bernard Ryman so stoutly through his time.
Yeah, and I mean, it had kind of been a little bit of a revolving door, right? Since Anthony Costanzo, who was obviously excellent, so to have him come in and, again, to have that position under wraps is a big deal. So you have him at number 1, you have Alec Pierce at 4, and you have Jalen Jones at 5. So you have the 2 and 3 slot open. The next option is Nick Cross.
He's a third rounder, so I'll say 3.
Okay.
Nick Cross was okay. Nick Cross was like the kind of guy you would want to take in the third round because he was that guy, a 3-year guy at Maryland, 20 when he was drafted, and I think it just turned 20. Yeah. So he had a lot of maturing to do and kind of figured stuff out exactly how these guys, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they draft guys and they get wobbly. A guy like Quincy Wilson.
Yep.
Who they drafted in the second round. Never worked out. He was a really young guy too. But Cross worked out with that kind of that format that they like to use with third rounders.
Gotcha. So now the next name is going to be Ballard's second best draft pick.
That's it.
Ben Banogu.
Oh, God. Yeah. You did that on purpose. I don't believe you had Ben Banogu as the last guy. I had a feeling you were either going to come with Ben Banogu or Kamoko Toure. I had a feeling I was going to get that as the last guy. As you know,
you're
screwing the game.
Well, listen, you got to do something to shake it up, right? I mean, I named all good picks. A little shock value at the end.
I didn't see that coming.
This is a game we're trying to win out here. So
then Ballard doesn't have a second. He's got a sixth. So I'm going to put Banogu at 6.
We'll leave the 2 slot open for another time. So right now we're wrapping this thing up. Question for you, as I'll always ask at the end: is there anything that you want the people to know about? What are you giving away right now? I know you're always doing the giveaway. Pristine Auction. That's what you use. You do the surprise box.
I got the. I won one of those 6 item surprise boxes. I got a Rams jersey autographed by Jack Youngblood, which is cool. I got a Peyton Manning autographed 8x10, which is great. And it worked. I got excited when I opened the box and saw that because you don't know what you're getting.
Right.
I got one of the good ones.
The one, quite frankly, given the nature of the channel.
Exactly. And I've got a Goose Gossage autographed Cubs jersey that's for me because I did an event with Goose Gossage and interviewed him for an hour and a half. And he signed they had a jersey. He said, "Here, let me sign this for you," and gave it to me. So I've got that, but I don't like keeping things like that. I'd rather give it away. I've got a Kurt Signetti sweatshirt that I bought yesterday down at IU because he's killing it as the IU football coach. And there are a couple other. A Mike Brown autographed Bears helmet, full-size helmet. And Mike Brown was a terrific safety back in the day when Dick Duran was the head coach of the Bears. And he went nuts for a year and all by himself put the Bears in the playoffs. And so I like Mike Brown, and I was glad to get that. And we've got Chicago viewers, too, so good to serve them as well.
Gotcha. All right, so there it was. That was Kent Sterling. If somehow you're listening to this channel and are not subscribed to his, all the information for his stuff is going to be in the description of this episode. But until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Ride the Bench Colts podcast. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. I mean, particularly now. You couldn't have hated it that much, right? If you're still here. Yeah. And that's it. Colts training camp continuing. Kent Sterling, good luck tonight. And hopefully nothing too crazy happens. Nice status quo practice is what we're looking for here, yeah?
Thanks, Justin. You're the best. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.